So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining, and welcome to Peace Week, which is organized by the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution. They host this every semester to bring together students, faculty, alumni, and members of the conflict resolution community to engage in a week-long conversation around how to effectively address issues of peace and justice. The theme for this semester is Horizons of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for Peace. So in my session, I'll be discussing how we can leverage technology to empower everyday citizens to engage in citizen activism. But before I get into that, I do want to introduce myself. My name is Amani Mansour. I'm an alumna of the Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution, where I earned my undergraduate degree in 2014 and my graduate degree in 2016. I currently work as a technical architect at Debug Academy, where I lead the web development projects for many of our clients. So it may seem that I strayed very far away from my conflict resolution background, but it was actually an internship at Peace Tech Lab, a nonprofit dedicated to technology and peace building, that inspired me to learn how to code because I was learning about all the different ways other people were using their technical skills to build tools to help peace builders in conflict zones. And I thought that was really fascinating. So I wanted to learn how to code. And after I gained those technical skills, I worked at a digital agency called Beacon Fire Red. And they're now part of Allegiance Group, but their mission was to empower nonprofits with the digital technology they need in order to be successful. So I got to help build websites for many large nonprofit organizations, which was really cool. And my ultimate goal for myself is to combine my technical skills with my background in conflict resolution and to hopefully in some small way contribute to positive social change. And that's why I'm here today. So I have an idea for a software product, an app idea, that I think could make activism more accessible for everyday citizens. So for the first 30 minutes, I'm going to be presenting that idea to you all. And then I'd like to use the remainder of the time to do a workshop where we can discuss and brainstorm ideas around some of the questions that have come up while I've been thinking through the design and flow of the app. Okay, so like I mentioned, my talk is about how we can leverage technology to empower everyday citizens to engage in citizen activism. So let's first start by defining what citizen activism is. It's when people come together in collective actions aimed at influencing political or social outcomes in pursuit of a perceived common good. It's generally aimed at holding governments and institutions accountable or advocating for policy change. So what is everyday activism? This is sort of the name I currently have for my app idea. And I use the word everyday both as one word and two words because I want to empower everyday citizens, your average ordinary citizen, to engage in activism every day. Basically just making it more of a habit where people can engage in activism on a more daily basis. So the goal of the app is to make activism more accessible to everyday citizens. And throughout some of the slides, I have these wireframes. I'm not a designer by any means. I'm usually the developer, but this was just to help you all visualize what I'm talking about. So if someone were to download this app, they'd be able to explore the various causes and choose which ones they would like to join. So why is the goal to make activism more accessible? Well, citizen activism is very important to a society because it can drive significant social and political change. And this change has the ability to promote social justice and equity, to hold governments and institutions accountable, to create policy change and increase democratic participation so citizens have a say in the social and political decisions of their society. So it's really about giving people the power to engage in meaningful action that drives the change they want to see in their society. Another reason why making activism more accessible is a goal is because it's also good for an individual's well-being. It can provide a sense of purpose and empowerment. It can be an outlet for emotions, as well as increase social connection. So you realize you're not alone, that other people have similar ideas and similar goals as you do. And it can also counter feelings of depression, anxiety, and guilt. I think one of the hardest things is when you see something wrong or see an injustice and you feel like you don't have the power to do anything about it. It can be very frustrating and lead to sadness and anger. So having a way to engage in a healthy and meaningful way towards the change you want to see in your society can also be good for an individual's well-being. So how can we achieve this goal? Can we make activism more accessible for the everyday citizen? I think we start by reducing the barriers to entry that people are experiencing. A lot of times product ideas come from someone trying to solve a problem within their own life. So I myself have causes that I care deeply about. And while I do take some actions to support them, it's not in the amount that I would like. And I don't feel like the actions I'm taking are as meaningful or impactful. So I think for me and what I've observed in my community are that some of the barriers to entry include time constraints. So finding time outside of your work and family obligations can be difficult. Not having a clear and reliable source of information, whether it be on the issue or on opportunities to engage in collective action, I think can be difficult. And I'm not saying the information isn't out there. I think it's just that now with the internet and social media, there's so much information out there that it can be hard to find what you're looking for or what you need. Sometimes you might not even be aware of what you need or are looking for. And then you also have to consider the fact that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Um, so it can be difficult for people who already don't have a ton of time. And then lastly, skepticism on the impact of your actions. So if you feel like the little bit that you can do won't make a difference, then you might not do it at all. And it's the same logic that goes into elections. We're always told every vote matters, and yet thousands of people still don't show up to the polls because they don't think their one singular vote is going to make a difference. So, am I alone in these sentiments? Well, I did some research and I found a couple of surveys that I want to go through. So, this is the 2018 voter engagement survey that surveyed US adults over the age of 18. And some of its key findings were it reported low levels of civic engagement, where in the last 12 months, about 45% of respondents did not engage in any activity. In terms of reasons why they didn't engage, about 40% of Americans said they do not get involved in social causes or campaigns because of lack of information about the issues. And this increases to 49% for young Americans. And then 40% of Americans said they do not engage or take action because they do not believe it will make a difference. So here we have lack of information and skepticism of their impact of their actions being barriers to entry. And then lastly, 20% said they do not engage in campaigns and causes because they do not want to be criticized. This next survey was by Public Input, the 2023 Resident Engagement Survey, and this surveyed 1,000 residents across the U.S. on their willingness to engage with state and local governments on issues. So one of the key findings from this survey was that residents are motivated to engage on a variety of issues, but report not being made aware of opportunities to engage. So the top cited reason for not engaging was I did not know about the opportunity. And the second top reason was I did not have enough information to contribute my input. So again, here we have lack of information being a challenge for people, but also important to note is that people do want to engage more than they are. Okay, so I also did my own survey a couple weeks ago, and I promoted it on my social media platforms and sent it to friends and family and asked them to share it with their network. So I understand I didn't have as much control over my sample the way the other surveys did, but I still felt like it was valuable to do and provided some good insight. So I want to share my key findings with you. I received 62 responses, 58 of those being from individuals living in the US, and about half were between the ages of 25 to 34. So the first key finding is around levels of engagement in activism. So the first question was, are you currently interested in a social, political, or environmental cause that you would want to provide support to? So this is to understand, are people interested in supporting a cause? And there were various yes statements as well as a no statement. But the yeses were, yes, I have taken some actions for all of the causes I support, or yes, I'm actively involved in all of the causes that I support. So it's to gauge two things. Are they interested, and what's their general level of engagement? So over half of respondents said, yes, I have taken some actions for some of the causes that I support. Close to 90% did select one of the yes statements. So the vast majority of people are interested in supporting a cause, and most people have at least taken some action towards their causes. This next question, also related to levels of engagement, was how often do you engage in any form of citizen activism? About a third said occasionally, which was 3 to 5 times per year. And then 27.5% said rarely, 1 to 2 times per year. So those were the top two answers. So it was overall generally on the lower end of engagement. But it comes out to like a 60-40 split where almost 60% engage rarely or occasionally. And then just under 40% engage frequently, which is once a month, or very often, multiple times a month. Okay, so this next key finding is about perceived effectiveness of activism. So when asked on a scale of 1 to 5, how effective do you think your activism has been in creating change? Almost 39% said 2, which was slightly effective. And then 30% said moderately effective, which is right in the middle of the scale at 3. And then close to 18% said not effective at all. So generally, people are feeling like their actions haven't led to creating change. And now I'm going to talk about the challenges that people expressed in terms of engaging in activism. So when asked, would you like to participate in more activism than you currently do? For this question, respondents could select as many answers that apply. So it wasn't just a simple yes or no. It was yes or no with a reason, and they could select as many that apply to them. So the top 3 answers here were yes, but I don't have enough time. Yes, but I'm concerned about my safety and political or social repercussions. Yes, but I don't know how to get involved. Again, the majority of people are selecting yes, meaning they want to engage in more activism, but they are facing challenges, lack of time, not knowing how to get involved, which I think falls under lack of information. But then there's also fear of repercussions that's presenting itself as a challenge. And this next question is, what is the biggest challenge you face when trying to engage in activism? Here, respondents could select one answer. So before they could select multiple, so I could get a gauge of all the challenges, all the types of challenges they're facing. But here, I just want them to select one so that they are telling me what their biggest challenge is. And the top 3 answers here were at number 1, time constraints, with almost a third selecting that. And then tied for second place was not feeling like my actions will make a difference and fear of repercussions. And then the third most selected answer was lack of information. So these top 3 answers ended up being a top 4 because 2 of them tied for second place. But essentially, you have lack of time, lack of information, feeling like your actions aren't making a difference, all presenting them in the top 3 answers. But again, this fear of repercussions is also a challenge that people are facing. And then the last question I'll go through is, if there were a software product to help you participate in activism more often, what features would be most valuable to you? Rank the options from one to four, one being most valuable. So this was just a gauge for me to see what features people would find most useful to them. So at number one, which is most valuable, it was easy access to information. Two was easy access to collective actions. Three, privacy protections. And four, ways to track my impact. So what are the surveys telling us overall? First, they're showing us that generally there are low levels of engagement in activism for everyday citizens, but there is a desire that people have to engage in more activism. But the challenges they're facing include time constraints, skepticism of the impact of their actions, fear of repercussions, and lack of information. And fear of repercussions wasn't just presenting itself in my survey. In that first survey, I discussed the 2018 voter engagement survey. 20% of the people said fear of criticism was preventing them from getting involved. So I do think that falls under the umbrella of fear of repercussions. So, how can we lower these barriers to entry? My proposal is to create a comprehensive software platform that provides knowledge, action, and impact tracking. So, I want users to be able to get on the app, select the causes that they want to join, and then for each cause, they can learn more or take action. Learn more is having all the knowledge that they need to understand their chosen cause. Take action provides all the collective actions that they can take part in to support their cause. And impact tracking is for them to track all the actions that they've taken so that they can be encouraged to continue to do more. And I know from the surveys, fear of repercussions was also a barrier to entry, and it is something I'm going to address later on in this presentation. So let's talk about knowledge informing the activists. So this will provide users with reliable information and resources so they can understand the complexities of their chosen cause and advocate effectively for them. So it can include things like facts and figures to access accurate data, talking points, so they have concise and persuasive arguments they can articulate during conversations, in-depth articles to cover the nuances of each cause, and news updates so they stay informed with the latest developments. And then for action, this is about showing users and providing them with all the opportunities to engage in collective action so that they can support their cause. So it can include things like event participation, being able to discover and join protests and rallies and educational events. It could be taking part in direct actions like sit-ins or boycotts or endorsements of companies, depending on their stance on issues. It could be signing a petition, contacting your representative, um, discovering volunteer opportunities with local organizations, or donating to those organizations to support their work financially. So it can be various collective actions that people can go in and have the tools they need in order to support their cause. And then there's impact tracking. So I think it would be important to allow users to see the number of actions they've taken towards their causes. And we can have things like an activist streak that's daily, weekly, or monthly, or participant levels like ally, activist, or change agent, which people would get that label depending on how many actions they've taken or the types of actions they're taking, just as a way to encourage people to keep going. But more importantly, I think providing updates on movement wins so they could see the progress of their movement and be encouraged to keep taking action. And lastly, my hope is to connect an activist actions with positive outcomes in the movement. So, for example, if someone's been contacting their representative and eventually that representative does have a policy change, that is in line with what they want for their cause and their movement, then we can connect that activist action to that positive outcome. And then they can see how their actions are actually making a difference and be encouraged to continue to take action. So what about fear of repercussions? So this is, a big topic, and it's not easy to resolve. So I don't think my ideas here are going to resolve everything, but I think it can help. And when we talk about fear of repercussions, I think a lot of times, we think about the big repercussions, which, it could be people protesting and maybe they're in a society with a repressive government, and they're met with violence or arrests and things like that. But there's fear of repercussions in every society because, when you're supporting a cause, especially if it's during a time when it's not popular, if you're vocal online, it can lead to losing your job, struggling to get another job. So it can really impact your livelihood. And these are things that have happened. So some of the ways that I want to address this uh, is first and foremost, this goes without saying, but obviously protecting user data. So limiting data collection to only what is necessary. If the app doesn't need certain data, it shouldn't collect it. Ensuring the use of the most secure software and updating it regularly to reduce the chance of hacks and data breaches is obviously important. And then encrypting data so that in case there is an exposure, it will be encrypted and very, very difficult to understand. Another thing I've been thinking about is allowing users to have some form of anonymity, maybe using usernames and instead of real names. But I have to weigh the pros and cons of that. Like, if people are signing a petition without using their real name, is it going to be as effective? I'm not sure. Um, and then lastly, education. So I think educating users on their rights and protections, providing users with information on how to handle various situations in order to protect themselves is crucial. Um, So, it could be as simple as giving them the information to know how to handle a conversation with HR if they get pulled into a meeting based off of something they posted online. What should they say? What shouldn't they say? What are their rights and how do they advocate for them effectively? I think that can be very empowering for people. So, all in all, Everyday Activism, the app is meant to be a one-stop shop for people to become informed and take action on the issues they care about. It's about creating more productive allies to a cause, right? There are organizations, there are people and leaders who are dedicating themselves to certain causes, but there are a lot of supporters out there who just don't know what to do, who would be allies, who might like a post on social media, who might share it on their social media, but they can be more productive allies. And I think by engaging those people, we can increase and sustain collective efforts. Um, so that they amplify a movement and are more impactful. And I do think that this can be more than just a tool. I think it could be a movement in and of itself towards a more informed, active, and empowered society. So the question here is, are there any other software products out there that are similar? These are some that I think have features that overlap with everyday activism, but I do think my app would differ from them. So I think the knowledge component in everyday activism would be more comprehensive. There would also be more options with the type of collective actions that can be taken. Also, the user experience is focused on supporting a cause rather than supporting a particular collective action. So it's not about supporting a certain petition, but it's about supporting a cause. And maybe one of the actions a person takes is signing a petition. But there's so many various ways that they can take action. And the goal is for them to take more than just one action, but to make it a daily habit. And I also think by focusing on all three components, knowledge, action, and impact tracking, and doing them really well, it can sustain collective efforts and keep the allies engaged in the movement. Okay, so that's the presentation for me explaining the idea to you. The next part of this talk is to do a workshop where we brainstorm ideas about creating causes. So a lot of what I talked about is the purpose of the app when it comes to the everyday citizen, and what they'll be gaining from the app. But I haven't really touched on who's creating the causes that the everyday citizen can join. And so I have 3 questions that I would like us to brainstorm ideas about. But before I do that, I do want to give us a couple minutes just to digest everything I've said, and to ask questions if you have them. Okay, so the app is not already available. This is an idea I have, and I'm presenting it to you all to gain insight, and to gain some ideas and address some of the questions I have here. But my goal is to work on it. It's who are the cause creators? So can it be any user? Can any user sign up and create a cause for other people to support? Should it only be established organizations who are already working within the field? Is there some type of hybrid model that we could use? So what I was thinking we could do is we can spend 2 minutes for people to just jot down their thoughts. And then maybe do 5 minutes of small group discussion where we'll use the breakout rooms feature in Zoom. And then we can spend a few minutes doing a large group discussion where we bring the ideas together. So if you get stuck at all, I would just go through each one. So imagine any user can create a cause and then list out the pros and cons of that. And then do the same for established organization. And I would start there, and hopefully the ideas will start flowing. Okay, we can all come back to a larger group discussion. Um, so you should still be able to see my screen. Um, but yeah, so I have this document so I can collect any important notes we make or talk about. So Matt has been nice enough to put some things in the chat, um, and expressing that he thinks it should be established organizations, because if any user is able to create a cause, it could be, overly saturated. It would be an influx of causes. But that there should also be moderation by, a team. I guess that the team creating the app to make sure that all the causes are in line. So, I think one thing I need to do so you guys can speak up is.
Oh, I did it. I think
Oh,
everyone should be able to unmute themselves. Yes.
okay. Yeah, so if you want to speak up, feel free to do so and share your thoughts.
I would say I agree with Matt, but then I also feel like there should be like a maybe subcategory of there's organization A that supports this cause, but there's people that are like in the same area, like location wise, that want to create like an event that supports this cause that they can like post about it and everyone who follows that one organization would be able to see it. Um, if that makes any sense. Trying to put my thoughts
Right.
into so like I guess it could kind of be like a following basis. So like say there's 10 causes, I'm following 2 out of 10, and every time the organization posts something, or I guess any user could maybe comment on like a forum saying, hey, we're having this event in Fairfax, Virginia this Saturday, it will notify everyone that is following that organization about that event.
Okay, so essentially you want to give people the freedom to kind of like submit types of collective action, so it's not just coming from a singular organization.
Yes. So it could be like a so for the organization that supports, a cause, also has like an open, I guess, forum where people can comment or make posts about certain things happening in certain locations and um, yeah.
Right. And I think so if we do established organization, um you know, they'll likely it'll add a sense of credibility, right? If established organizations are creating the causes and they're already doing the work so they can easily provide the information and actions people should take. But I think one thing you're touching on is the one con to it is like there wouldn't be as much space for grassroots movements or lesser known causes that are more like community and local based.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to consider.
Hmm.
Okay, established. Okay, if Colonel, if you want to speak up, go ahead. I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I was thinking about um, just the nature of the internet and how, trolls are real
Mhm.
and bad actors are a thing. And just wondering, like, if individuals can start a cause, are there some requirements that could be put in place where, um, like if you're really not serious or you're really just trolling, it would be enough to discourage you from continuing. But if you really are serious, it wouldn't be so much where you're like, this isn't worth my time. I could do it faster some other way. And I can't think of anything that would maintain someone's anonymity in that case. Because I feel like anonymity empowers trolls a lot of times. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah. No, it definitely is tricky. I don't feel like there's a simple answer to it. But the more I think about this app and how it's going to work. I don't think, like, I definitely think it's going to require some type of moderation. So there is going to be some overhead where people are going to have to moderate the types of causes being created, the things that are being posted within each cause, because you can't escape that, but you can't just let it run wild. So while sometimes it's nice to think of things in a more decentralized way where people can create and then as long as they get enough support, it'll move up to the top. I do think there's going to have to be a set of guidelines, um, a terms of use, so to speak. And if people aren't following it, then they can't have the ability to have free reign to create causes or to post things.
Yeah, and adding to that, I know that Facebook groups always have, the guidelines and admins can, suspend people from posting if they, go against some of the guidelines and rules of the page.
Yeah.
Uh, so something like that.
Exactly. And also, you know, when we start out with this app, um, it's like nice to think of things more iteratively. So you have like your minimal viable product, which is like the absolute necessary features you need to just launch the app. But I think how you expose it to the community should also be a phased approach. So we can start with one cause, um, and it will be easier to moderate, ensuring like trusted people are using it, and then take lessons learned from that. to continue to iterate and improve the product and improve the guidelines as well.
And I know that Colonel said, for people that are trolling, I think if there are individuals that can create these causes, there would be like, not a sign up form, but like they would have to submit something that, what's the cause? Like just a couple questions. So like they actually have to take their time to answer the questions. I think people that are just in it to troll, they're not going to take the time to answer, 5 questions that they actually have to required questions, I guess, and submit it. And then that has to be approved for the cause to be posted by that individual.
Hmm.
That could be helpful.
Well, if you think of it, jump back in. But yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Um, we could even have like set up an automated reviewal system. So it can't be that people can just post and it automatically goes public. It can be that they post and maybe it requires like a sponsor from one of the organizations or one of the organizers of the cause. And then once it gets approved, then it can be seen by the rest of the community. So we could do something like that too. Colonel, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was thinking that one of the ways we could discourage trolls is, which is kind of there's a pro and con to it, but I was thinking if people had to wait a certain amount of time before their cause goes live, like if I had to wait a week as a troll, I'm like, it's not worth waiting a week.
Hmm.
I'm going to move on with my life. At the same time, there are urgent issues that come up that can't necessarily wait a week. So I don't know, that one is tough. But then um, I was trying to also understand, if I am a concerned community member and I want to get involved and I want to have an impact, I don't understand how that's possible by also being anonymous.
Can you repeat the last part again? Sorry.
Yeah, so the the anonymity part,
Hmm.
I'm tripping up on that part. Like if I want to have an impact and be anonymous, I don't I
So
don't know how that would work.
I don't think the people creating the cause or the organizers behind the cause will be anonymous.
Hmm.
But I think the everyday citizen doesn't necessarily have to be out there. Um, you know, it's simple things like, for example, if we want to encourage people to take a particular action, sometimes seeing, oh, my friends have taken this action can be encouraging. But I also think at the same time, just letting them know, hey, 500 people have taken this collective action, join them to amplify it. And if they know that other people are doing it, that in and of itself might be enough to encourage people to focus on that particular collective action. So I don't think the organizers have to be anonymous. And it's not that the everyday citizen has to be anonymous, but I don't think their profile has to necessarily be out there in the open either.
Just have a quick question. Hi everybody. Uh, so are you mentioning it at the forefront that peace is the main purpose in and of each and every one of these conflicts? So that something that sets yours apart, say from the Facebook one, would be that peace is the ultimate goal, or from your like what is the main, because I saw your differences and whatnot, but I thought, okay, are you going to lead these causes with the resolution of being peace, or are you looking to just say come and explore and be together, be together and united, and it's the bringing of the people together? Is that what the main purpose of the app, or is the main purpose of the app bringing the people together so that they're together in solidarity, that then they come together in solution to peace.
Okay, so let me think how to phrase this. So at a minimum here, the goal is to allow people to engage in activism so that they can contribute to the change that they want to see in society. So I feel like there's an issue where people do care about certain causes and certain issues, but it's not being reflected at the top of society by the decision makers. And so you have citizen activism that, we've had like for decades, for centuries, and it can drive significant social and political change. And the purpose here is to bring together people in solidarity, but most importantly, to bring the allies of a particular cause, people who are already supporters, but just don't know what they should do or don't feel knowledgeable enough to do anything, to make them more productive allies. So to bring them in solidarity where they have easy access to information, to tools, where they don't have to go searching outside of this app. They have a reliable source, and that they can support their cause on a more regular basis and feel part of the movement. And ideally, yes, we want to bring peace into the world, but I think, peace is a byproduct of like bringing justice too. So like I think, sometimes with social movements, it's about that like good trouble type thing where you're going against the status quo, but it's because you see an injustice in your society and you want to resolve it. And that as a byproduct, peace can come from that. But first, you have to pursue justice.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. I just feel like sometimes it's like we're all master students, right? Or some PhD, but our starting points are all very different. I am such a newbie compared to many of my cohorts. And therefore my questions are so, you know, very beginning. And I think if I was coming into something, somebody else that was coming into this app would want something much further along, much further into your process of, and maybe want something more out of the experience. So that's why when you were talking about the questions, and how you would be setting it up and what somebody would get out of it, I liked how you mentioned, where somebody could go and how they could navigate it. I just think, oh, even what brings people to something, let alone what somebody could get out of the back end, like you said, the byproduct of peace is very different. So sometimes people just go to it even entirely different. So once they even get in and how they determined and are able to navigate it. So you have a lot of work ahead.
It's
Good
a journey.
stuff.
But okay, I think we can move on to the second question, um, which kind of is related to this one. So we can just build off of it. So the next question is, can there be multiple versions of a cause? So can the same cause be created more than once, but by different people or organizations? So we talked about who the cause creators are, but what happens if two organizations want to create the same cause? Do we allow that to happen and then users just choose, the everyday citizen chooses which version of the cause that they're going to support? Or should we have an overarching cause? Um, and then how do two organizations navigate that? It could be something like having sub campaigns or things of that nature. But yeah, take, 5 minutes to think this through, and then we can come back to a larger group discussion. So I'm going to cut the 5 minutes just a little bit short here because I do want to make sure we get to the last question. So if people have any thoughts that they'd like to share for this second question, please let me know. Feel free to unmute yourselves and just jump in.
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that if there's so many similar versions of a cause, it can get very messy, I guess, and disorganized.
Yeah.
But there is, there's also pros to having, different, I mean, the same cause with different qualities or attributes, but I think it'd be too messy if there was. So I would say probably having one cause, that, let's just say, different organizations, um, they all agree with, maybe having something that, like, again, this, I'm thinking like Facebook, but like liking something or even endorsing a cause. So like, let's say three organizations all support one cause, they can endorse the cause. And um, this goes back to if, an organization or even an individual submitting for a cause, say that, it's already in the database as a cause. Um, if by then they are getting like denied to post, you know, a new, like, their cause, having that denial email, make sure it's clear that, here's this cause that's very similar that, we cannot post because of X, Y, and Z because it's, so close to this one that's already posted. And just making it sure that the individual organization that submitted has those reasons of why it is getting denied. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's very tricky because it can get very much confusing if there's so many different, pages that are either the same or very much similar, and people could get confused within the app and be overwhelmed with how many different versions of a cause there is.
Yeah, I do tend to agree with those sentiments. I think I lean towards there should just be one overarching cause.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, this is where user roles can come in. So there can be one overarching cause, but then we can have like verified organizations, even verified users, because some social movements do have like leaders,
Mhm.
and people can have like people who are doing work with in the field can be verified, uh, meaning that they can submit like collective actions, they can submit knowledge pieces.
Mhm.
Um, and then for users, for the everyday citizen, they would just have to follow one cause. And they can actually see, okay, this was submitted by like this verified organization. And if it's one that they know, then they might be more likely to take that collective action.
Mhm.
In addition, for people who are everyday citizens, but maybe want to do a little bit more, or people who are just like not verified yet, to be in an organizer type role, they can submit collective actions or knowledge pieces, but they can like when they submit, it would be in a draft state and it would require a verified user to approve it, so to speak. So you kind of like build in that moderation to like maintain the credibility. So that's something like I've been thinking about. Like I know like technically it's feasible, but just trying to think, you know, are there any ways that people wouldn't like this? Um,
Mhm.
but I do think sticking to one cause is best for the user experience for the everyday citizen.
Mhm.
I'm going to jump in for a second, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I get for simplification and like you just said, user friendly and whatnot, but the the ultimate personal experience that again, what brings the person to the platform, if you will, that then changes, right? And it's almost like doing, we've had a lot of discussion in one of my other classes about logical frameworks, right? So when you have to fill out and come up with the questions versus assumptions versus and it's almost to the same scale of what you're discussing of like, you know, clumping it all together, but then you're breaking it down, but then you're reclumping it for each portion, and it's like sticking to it, and then but does it match and does it circle back? And depends like which model are you using, right? Like is it a linear model? Is it because on one of the things that we did, it's like if you did a like equation, and sorry if I'm losing you all on this analogy, you could go back and check and plug it in. You're like, oh, okay, I saw that this and this and this, and you're like, okay, it checked out. So for this, I don't know if you then interviewed like the person to why they came, then when they used the app, and then the people that then created the questions, like that kind of a thing, and then say, oh, did that all line up? I don't know if you're ever going to get that experience to then know if it all like is in sync and ended up happening the way, because I don't know if it's intended to be that kind of a thing. And I don't know if those things are tangibly able to be captured the way that you're like discussing it, because of what you ultimately just said, which is make it simple, you know, break it down into these bigger, groups so that it's just user friendly. Like if that's the bottom line, it's just user friendly so that people can come and be together,
Mhm.
but then like how Colonel was saying, how do you be anonymous? How do you avoid all these bad actors? That's when you start diving deep. And then those smaller questions have to be contemplated in it. I think that's what ultimately, how do you do this? How do you do what you do with your data and answer all of, you know, I know I threw like four things at you at the end there. Sorry.
Right. So I do have some follow-up questions for you, but like just to start off, I don't think that we're going to have an answer for every question, and I think that's okay. I think you have to expect the process to be very iterative so that you are continuously learning, and from those learnings, you're adjusting and modifying as needed. Um, but one thing I wanted to ask you is when you're talking about this person, which user are you thinking about? Are you thinking about the everyday citizen, or are you thinking about the user that's like the organizer, the cause creator?
I'm thinking of the everyday citizen that's supposed to be coming to your app and using your app that you are then designing this for.
Okay. So can you explain like some of the things you're worried about for that everyday citizen?
Well, so for example, I mean, I don't want to get into the like specifics of it, but we had an incident, and I want to draw off Colonel's thing in one of our other piece things that happened this week where a bad actor got involved in the middle of one of our presentations. And I literally was in tears. I had to write the professor and be like, you were so amazing. And I was like crying on the other side because this incident had happened and I never saw it coming. I would have never thought that that was part of the equation of like Peace Week. And I think that that's kind of like some of the things that, um, that like, although we can't anticipate or know, all of the scenarios that, you know,
Right.
um, but it's, sorry, and I hate to leave everyone hanging there, but those that were there just are gonna have to know, and it's too,
Yeah, no, don't worry. You're fine.
yeah, yeah, sorry. So, but yeah, so that's just it. So, yeah, sorry to to not be able to fully answer your question, but yeah, it just is. I guess that's why. My head is bouncing off of that, and then his question, Colonel's question, or Colonel, you would jump in anytime.
I think you had
But
both.
yeah, just that's it. So I'm like, oh, that is really what it's just that origin story that really is focused for me, that is personalized of what brings people to these collaborative efforts. And so that's why I'm really into what you're saying in this app. And I love how your coding and everything, what brought you. See, you're the one with the secret cape because you know how to do the back end. A lot of people have all these great ideas, but they don't know how to implement it. And you do. And so you've
Right.
done something, you've created something, and now it's just making sure that that personal experience that brings people to your app is able to actually continue throughout while using your app.
Right. I do think anything online, you do have to worry about bad actors. Um, but in terms of the users joining being bad actors themselves, obviously you can remove users. If they're not following the terms of use agreement, then you have the right to remove them. But also, I just want to be clear, users, the general everyday citizen is not going to have the permissions to do a lot of things that they're not going to have the permissions necessary to do some of those bad acts that you're talking about.
Okay. So you
So
think it can be filtered out?
yeah, when you're building a website or developing an app, you have user roles and each role has certain permissions. And one of the things you learn really quickly as a developer is give the least amount of permissions as possible. Uh, the least amount of permissions as possible for someone to use your website or your tool effectively.
Okay.
So you start with the least amount that you can get away with. Because so it's not that sometimes people, they're intentionally not bad, but sometimes they just make mistakes that could be catastrophic to your software product, if you give them too much permission.
Sure.
So there are ways to control this. So I don't want you guys to be so worried about that that you don't focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Right.
I also feel like in my mind, like, and again, there are, you said there will be user roles, and it might be as simple as like um, a button that says like, the button that says dislike, but they can't comment, or then like a button that says I'll be there, like at an event or something, like,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, that kind of there may be like no commenting, or maybe no commenting on certain posts that could be controversial, and maybe there be things that you can post on other things that um would be less likely to have those comments. I don't know, but I do think that not having a comment role overall might be a disadvantage to those who want to be involved more. Like we said, citizens want to be involved more in activism. So taking away that their freedom to comment may be not the best, but yeah.
Right. No, I mean, you can give them the freedom to comment, and you could even make comments something that have to at least go through a reviewal process. And with moderation, as we're talking about it, it seems like it's going to be a very time-consuming thing, but we can also consider the fact of like doing sentiment analysis with AI. So like if it generally doesn't seem like controversial words are being used, then maybe it can get approved right away in terms of comments. But other things might be flagged and need to be reviewed by a verified organization or user before it gets posted. So we can do things like that to sort of automate the reviewal process, but still making it where if manual reviews are needed, then we can do them as well. Um, I do just, so we're kind of at time, but we did start a few minutes late. But I just want to get to this last question. And instead of having you guys have time to think about it, I just want us to stay in the large group discussion. And when you're ready to share some of your thoughts, how do we handle competing causes? So this is something I probably the most difficult question for me is this one, because in a nutshell, I just don't want this product to be used, for people who are like on the wrong side of history or things like that. So, but how do we handle that? Like, do you have to take a neutral stance? Can you have community guidelines and values? And if certain causes don't match them, then they don't get approved. What can we do here? And how do you guys feel about competing causes? Like, am I alone in thinking in my way of thinking? Like, I don't know if I'm being too much about it, but it's just something that has come up, and I'm not quite sure how to handle this question exactly.
I mean, maybe it's like the press, right? Or it's like you show a little bit of information from the other side, but you don't give all your airtime to the other side's point of view. So it's like you you are ultimately in charge, being the web developer, of what it is you display. But I think, I don't know what it is I read recently, but it was something like how you test out your own theory is you kind of, you have like a good argument against it. And it's like, you don't want to not talk about the things that are against your own stuff. So you do want to show balance. You do want to, you just don't not want to air out the fullness of what your site has the potential to be, whatever the cards may fall. So I think whatever your questions that you pose, open-ended questions, and the linking that it goes, I mean, have it pan out to where it could go down both ways, but just, you know, obviously you are, that's why I asked at the beginning, did you want it to solve? Like, is there an endpoint where it solves a conclusion of one of the questions? Like, is it peace is at the end and you're showing some of these bigger questions, or is it just like people are coming together and truly the synergy of collaborative people together, and it goes wherever it goes, and the platform together socializing together, and is that it? And that's kind of, and if that's the case, then I don't know if you can avoid, you know, like you said, competing
I guess the
causes.
question here is, do we allow, um, like, say two organizations, each on the other side of the cause in terms of their perspective, do they each get to create a cause and advocate for it using this platform?
I think yes. That's
Yeah,
just me.
yeah, I would think yes as well, because yeah,
Okay. But like for causes that fall under, the human rights umbrella, if, if there's one side that is disrespecting or not considering the human rights of another group, how do we handle that? Do we just let it go and then let the people decide? So if they don't get as many users taking action for them, then likely the other side will
Well,
succeed? Or
I think one of the main questions too is what are you doing with the information that's giving on this site? Are you cultivating it? Are you gonna, I imagine with you being a developer, you are gonna do something with this data. So these conversations are going to relay and share something. I would hope that it's like a gold mine, right? I mean, that's why over at Facebook, whatever his name is, I forget. That's why all of us who did public things on there, he was taking all of that information because he was doing something with it. And now AI does it all for it. But I would imagine you're looking to do something with this information, either observe it or take something away from it. And so I imagine these competing things, or maybe it will be the first platform where people can actually have peaceful dialogue and just share, because the people that are interested and really care about these issues feel like this is a safe space to come and have just genuine conversation, and they just want to learn more. I would love to think that there's a place that I could go, because I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little about much, if you can't tell by the way I talk. But if I thought there was a place that I could go and learn more about human rights or more about Darfur or whatever, a specific place, and I could just come and engage with someone, not to have necessarily even an opinion, but just to learn and be an observer. Maybe there's a gallery. Maybe there's an area for just speaking people who, because they know a lot. Maybe somebody's from Darfur and could do it. Maybe there's someone like me who says, I just want to be in the gallery because I'm not that comfortable yet to speak on it, because I know very little, like I said. Maybe there's elements, and that's how you guys get to moderate it, because there are moderators. But I mean, I think there's lots of ways in which you, the head of it, could choose, and that's how you keep track too of who goes where and whatnot. Maybe you limit the speakers to 5 on each side, or maybe it's not sides, maybe it's a round table, so there are no sides. Something, you know you get to do all that brilliancy, though. You get to make up all of that, you know happiness.
definitely giving me things to think about. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to contribute? Oh, there's
I
stuff
was,
in.
I was just going back to thinking about, just like say I'm on, a causes page and like I go back to just thinking that like I'm kind of thinking of I don't know, different organizations or different verified people in this one cause and them being verified so they can post things, so they can post, resources or events that are coming up and or there's going to be an online presentation about this and those verified people have that ability to post on that and not so much like the individual people having that you know availability to post on the causes page, if that makes sense. And going back to how people want or the tracking that you had mentioned, like how your actions can make a difference. I think that say the events in these organizations or these causes feed, there can be a button that says, I'm going, but it doesn't show everyone. So let's say so I'm looking at my app and I see this event happening this weekend and I'm saying I'm going or something. And that internally, I don't know how this would work. I'm just trying to think of ideas like, I say I'm going, and then with the tracking, like since you attended this event, this date, this made this impact or something. So that could be part of the tracking that internally you say I'm going, but it's not showing everyone on the feed that you're going. It's like an internal thing, and that could also help with the tracking of it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And
I'm past my time. So I just want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank the Carter School for having me and allowing me to present. And thank you all for your insight. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope I get to talk with you all again soon sometime.